Right, there's two or three that said they'll come, but we will kick off conscious of time. So I will share my screen. So brief agenda for this week. So we spoke about it a bit before, but we'll drop the cadence of this to weekly now. We're approaching the time where lots of things are happening, and it's probably best that we all stay informed. And Sam have an updated sort of detailed running timeline that we will talk through today. That's probably the most salient point. And then following that, we might need to adjust it based on point two that Ryan will just run through a timeline of some tooling elements on his end just to make sure it all knits together. The key point that we want to get out from point number two, and we might have to sort of refactor it tomorrow, is based on that timeline. Obviously, we'll want to share a public version of it, which is scrubbed and sanitized and has all the right sort of context in it, so we can make SBO's exchanges in the world aware of what's imminently going to be asked with them. So does anyone have any other key items they want to call out for other business now, just so I know how much sort of time?
I'd like sorry, go on. Just to Martin, okay, in terms of how the quadrant are coming along, maybe once we finished point number two, you could give, or even under AOB, you could give us a quick update on how that's going. It's important to us. You may have the update, Matt, but I know that Martin is working on it.
Cool. I'll tag it on at the end. Just I'll make sure I leave 10 minutes then. Kevin, you were saying something as well?
Yeah, I was just going to say, whether it's worth mentioning the Q&A session on Thursday.
Yes, I'll bring it up at the end as well. It's still planning, but good point. We'll come to it. Okay, moving on then. So previously, appreciate there's a lot of information, but that is the timeline that lots of people have contributed to, and we have been sharing. I am aware from lots of different angles that there is some context missing for when that date of the target of the 17th of July is being bandied about. So it is our anticipation to tidy this up a little bit for tomorrow's knowledge base update, and we'll be really clear that it's a community target, and there's a lot of dependencies that the community have to deliver, and when those thresholds are met, which we're holding a mirror to, then that date becomes a reality. But we will restructure that wording, and we'll restructure this diagram a little bit, primarily based on the diagram I'm about to show. So I don't know, Sam or Leonard, if you want to share, or if this is a good enough version for you to talk through. But this is, I believe, a proposition for how the next couple of weeks will go in terms of node updates and where they sit in environments. I don't know if you want to talk.
Yeah, so I'll just quickly introduce it. Sam and I got together last evening for about an hour and a half. We sketched through all the run-in, we call it, to the 8.12, where we'd go in terms of testing, how we deploy it to different environments, and the gray box at the moment is literally the exchanges window. So Sam, I'm going to hand over to you because I think you can articulate better in terms of the gates and what needs to happen. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So currently we're on 8.11. The 8.12 release is being put together right now. We're basically just working through a bunch of CI and integration issues, trying to get the node release out. Once we have the 8.12 release out, we will in parallel start our benchmarking against it, and our test team will be doing their integration tests against it. We're also going to reach out to SPOs and other community members to start testing it and basically let them know this is basically your last chance to report any bugs before we cut the 9.0 release and start telling people to start running it on mainnet. So 9.0, the difference between 8.12 and 9.0, if no bugs are found, is basically just going to be in the node itself. It's going to be changing some thresholds for basically what the highest protocol version is allowed. And that will basically allow us to release 9.0. Right now we have a placeholder in with the thresholds as well to not require a Conway Genesis file it's not in the node config, and it'll just shut down when the fork to 9 happens in that case. So that allows us to release 9.0 to mainnet without having a Conway Genesis file in there that could potentially be the wrong one. So we will do that. Then going down the line on that, so we're at the top there with the 9.0 going there. Then we get to the different networks here. So on preview, there's going to be a very, very short window, about a weekend basically, for folks to upgrade before we issue the hard fork, unless there's pushback from the community and they want a little bit more time to get their nodes updated. But we're going to be moving really fast on preview with 9.0. And then on pre-prod, we'll be releasing 9.0, which will not have a mainnet or pre-prod Conway Genesis file. And that will allow people to start updating to it, making sure everything's working in Babbage era. They can test their stuff on preview if they want to test it in Conway era, and so on and so forth. And then once we have the final Conway Genesis, which will include the cost model, it will include the guardrail script, it will include the interim CC member hashes. Once we have all that stuff in the Conway Genesis that we're going to be using, and the protocol parameters, then we will basically release a 9.0.1 release that basically just adds the configuration file and the hash for that configuration file, and say, hey, everyone that's on 9.0, please upgrade to 9.0.1. Otherwise, your nodes are going to stop running at the fork. Or manually download the configuration files if you don't want to re-download the whole release. It's going to be the same exact release information in it. So 9.0 will work perfectly fine with a new config file. And yeah, so
Sorry, Sam, can you just say again the date for
it.
9.0.1, the config file? Can you say the date again?
I don't know. That's basically very much in your guys' court of when you collect all the information that's going to go in the configuration file.
Yeah. So the three key things that Sam's mentioned. First of all, are the protocol parameters. We're expecting those to be available by the 27th. Secondly, the hash of the constitution. So that's with Danielle and you, Michael. So we need that as a precursor. And the third main thing is going to be the Constitutional Committee credentials. So what I'm saying is the plan is for those to be provided shortly after June the 26th. So once we've got all of those things, we can put together the Genesis file for 9.01.
Yeah, and on our end, it's about a 1 hour CI, waiting for CI basically to run to be able to merge it and cut the release. It's going to be very, very lightweight, so we're not particularly worried about it. It's just, it's more going to be a social thing of how long it takes to get this information.
And is there a dependency there? So I mean, I see that starts after the SPOs begin the upgrade process. Is there a dependency now between those things, or have they been decoupled?
We would like to give people at least 2 weeks from the finalization of the configuration files for people to deploy those configuration files. I think that's a reasonable amount of time. We're not going to start the whole 6 to 8 week process all over again when we get those configuration files.
Okay. Makes sense, thanks.
Yeah. I have a couple of questions. Thank you. I have a couple of questions. So for example, on here we show like SPO's upgrade to 9.0 on the pre-prod there. In that 2 weeks that's shown there, is that also including, are they upgrading to 9.0, sorry, and then they're going to upgrade to 9.0.1, and then they're going to hard fork into Conway bootstrapping, and then there'll be a hard fork into full governance?
Full Conway is not on this chart. That's going to be sometime 3 months after the hard fork, whatever time we decide, basically, for the second hard fork. That will be 10.0.
On mainnet or on the test nets?
On all of them. That will be 10.0 when we do that. So SanchoNet will continue to run in full Conway governance mode.
Okay.
Are you referring to Chang plus one?
Yes.
What are you
I'm
referring
referring to it. Yeah, so the Chang 1, Chang 2 on both on all the networks. Because here it just says upgrade to the node versions, but it doesn't say coordinate hard fork into the Chang 1 on testnet into Chang 2 on testnet. So I was wondering-
Chang 1 is not in this list. Well, Chang plus 1 is not in this list. It's just Chang.
This is just Chang only.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for
Right, so when we say-
preview, you'll see that line right there where it goes pink to dark red. That is the hard
Yeah.
fork on preview.
Okay.
And
Into
then
bootstrapping.
basically on mainnet and pre-prod, that final line there with the diamond at the very end of it.
Yeah.
That's the hard fork on mainnet and pre-prod.
So there
Okay,
is
so
an
that-
question, Ryan, about governance on pre-prod. So once we push the button, we're into Chang. People will be able to register as DREPs on pre-prod, but we're not expecting the same level of representation as we would on mainnet, of course. But any future governance action then depends on the DREPs and the SPOs endorsing it, as well as the Constitutional Committee on pre-prod also endorsing it.
That's probably my follow-up question as well. Like, is there a plan for constitutional committee members on pre-prod and preview, or is it assumed they're going to be the same? Is it the same individual entities as mainnet, or do we not know?
It can't be the same. It can't be exactly the same entities.
I would advocate
not the
on
same
pre-prod it
credentials, but-
should be the exact same entities with different credentials. I think we should require anyone running as a CC member on mainnet to also run on pre-prod.
Okay.
On
Is that a
preview, we'll
requirement for
probably
definitely
keep
going
a little
with?
bit more control over it.
Okay.
Does
We
that
should
mean we
probably
ask
let
them to
them
generate
know.
separate pre-prod credentials? Yeah.
But we also need the DREP representation as well as the CC. So
The DREP representation doesn't matter until Chang plus 1.
Okay. Sorry, I'm taking a lot of time. So is the expectation preview will be 9.0 really quickly, straight into Conway bootstrapping? Is that correct? Yeah.
Yes,
I
so
think
it'll go 9.0
and-
Conway bootstrap really quickly, and then it will run for
Yeah.
the full duration in 9.0 until we have the 10.0 release out.
Okay. And in that time, mainnet and pre-prod SPOs are expected to upgrade to 9.0.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Okay, so there's no dependency between people testing things on preview. So like testing bootstrapping, making sure the features work as they're intended, upgrade their tooling. There's no dependency on people to do that before SPOs are expected to upgrade their nodes on mainnet.
It depends. If you're a DApp and you want to be ready for the hard fork, the only place you're going to be able to test Conway readiness is preview.
Right. Okay.
That's why we're forking it as early as possible, so people have a test ground that they can play in there.
Yeah.
And then
Okay,
mainnet and pre-prod basically are going to fork around the same time, so you can't really depend on testing in pre-prod before mainnet.
Yeah. Okay. So I'd expect, people will want to test the governance stuff on preview. Likely, if I was a developer, I'd want to test on preview my governance features for my tooling before I upgrade on pre-prod and
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's not just your governance features; it's your actual DApp. So, like for example, if you're running a DEX, you might want to validate that your DEX works fine in Conway era.
Cool. Again, sorry, I know I'm taking up time. Is this okay if I do one more question?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I know we have Sancho along the top here. Maybe it's not fully discussed or scoped out. Is there a plan? Is it 8.12? There'll be a respin. 9.0, there'll be a respin on SanchoNet.
8.12 to 9.0 will not require a respin unless we find a bug. So basically what we're looking at is waiting on SanchoNet. We didn't include it in here because it was messy enough as is. But basically, you did add it in there. Never mind. Leonard's awesome. So on SanchoNet, we'll be releasing to 8.12 after the CC elections. That way, people that are doing the elections, if they want to participate in SanchoNet, basically show that they have the technical skills on how to be a CC member. They won't be impacted. And then we will go to 8.12 or possibly 9.0, depending on if 9.0 is out yet. But basically, it'll either go to 8.12 and then people can upgrade to 9.0 without having a respin, or just go straight to 9.0, all depending on timing of when we do the respin and when we have the release out.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Sam, can
Can I ask
you
one
cover?
more?
Yes, go ahead.
Sorry. Is there a rationale behind why we're doing pre-prod and mainnet upgrades and hard forks around the same time?
Yes,
I'm
so people want, the whole point of pre-prod is to be an environment as close as possible to mainnet at all times. So if you're a mainnet user and you're running a DApp on mainnet and you need to test a new feature you're doing, you're going to want to test that in Babbage era, not in Conway.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Until mainnet is in Conway. Preview is that's why we call it preview. Preview basically gives you that 6-week head start on mainnet and pre-prod.
Yes, Sam, can you cover off the 25th regarding the hardware wallets, just for folks on the call?
Yeah, so Ryan's probably more qualified to do this. I've just been reading Slack messages that people have said, but basically the hardware wallets were delayed yet again, and now they're saying July 25th. We should have the release. If that doesn't happen, we're probably going to need to discuss on this hard fork working group what we do, whether we just run without the hardware wallets or what our options are then, but we have no control over it. So,
Ryan, anything you want to add there? Finally, question for you.
Yeah. No, that was completely right. That's the same information I have. Unfortunately, the code's been done on the hardware wallet for at least 8 weeks now. I feel like longer. It's been done, audited, tested, and it's just been sat with Treasure and Ledger to do a formal official release. With the Ledger code, you can use the beta. It's called experimental version if people need to test it. Obviously, that's not ideal. Yeah.
Okay, let's track that one. Thanks, Ryan.
Any other questions, Chris? Sorry, I'm only on one screen, so someone's donged and put their hand up. I can't see who it is. Please come up.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Hello here. Hardware wallets. That's what does it actually mean? That we won't be able to use hardware wallets in new era, or if they're not ready by that time? Or what's...
Yep.
Okay. Oh. And hardware wallets, they expect to release new
well,
packages,
you won't
right?
you won't be able to use the governance features or the signing features, at least in the new era.
But
I'm
other
not
things,
sure.
I mean,
Ryan, do you know hardware wallets? Do most wallets basically send them a Conway transaction if it's in the Conway era, or will it actually send them a Babbage transaction if it's in the Conway era?
I'm not sure. I think it'd be dependent on the hardware wallet
Depends on the
interface
wallet
used.
implementation. So some wallet implementations might still work with old versions of hardware wallets, and other wallet implementations will just completely break because they don't understand the new transaction format.
oh, and you say completely break, that means we can't even send transactions. I mean, ordinary transactions, right?
Yeah, if the wallet generates a Conway transaction and the user is not running a version of the wallet that supports Conway, then the hardware wallet's just going to be like, I don't understand this transaction, and throw an error.
Okay.
But it's perfectly possible for a wallet to send it a Babbage era transaction in Conway era and submit it.
Oh, okay.
But I'm assuming most probably are defaulting to the current era.
It's definitely a point that we'll log, and we will flash out with those people to find an FAQ style answer as to what will happen for key wallets, and we'll socialize what their response is.
And Ryan, you're the contact person when it comes to hardware wallet things, because I believe that that's
I think to be
too much our questions.
Yeah, so Insect gave a grant through the Dev Trust to Vacuum Labs to implement this functionality, implement the upgrade to the hardware wallet firmware. And yeah, I've been the main contact on this stuff. So
Okay.
I'll ping the developers. I'll ping the lead dev on that just to double check the implementation detail list. You will be able to sign Conway transactions, or you can find Babbage ones, or this sort of detail. I'll chase that up.
Any other questions, queries on this? I appreciate there's a lot of information. So what we'll take as an action is we're recording this. We'll write down the salient points into something which is short and concise. I'll socialize it with the key speakers, so sort of Leonard and Sam, and if they're happy that that's sort of recorded properly, we'll then socialize those words out to all, just to make sure it's clear what this discussion has covered.
Jerry raised his hand there.
Jerry, you have a question?
Yeah, I guess it's one for you, Sam. The hardware wallet's readiness, is that required for the hard fork?
That is a social question. From a technical perspective, no. But from a social perspective, maybe.
Yeah, because I guess like the exchanges as well, they won't be able to move anything from cold to hot wallets if they're using the those devices after the hard fork. Yeah.
All depends on the software that they're using, whether it supports creating transactions in a previous era.
Yeah. So it's potentially a blocker for the hard fork. Yeah. Okay.
Well, we'll add it to the dependencies list, and based on the feedback that Ryan provides, we'll bring it back to this group once we have an answer that we can discuss. And if it's a social issue, then we'll discuss options for what that might mean to figure out what it means, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a dependency, but it's also like it's now a major risk. I would argue for this one as well, isn't it? Right. Okay.
It is based on this information today, so obviously it might take over 24 hours for sinking on people's heads. It would seem that is the longest poll or the most critical path type activity. Again, socially, I can't see it being a positive thing if we moved on without it.
Okay.
Just a quick note there. On the since the social and sort of communication thing was raised, I raised my hand earlier during the additional agenda items section, but I don't think you may have been able to see it, Matt. So I just wanted to raise, it would be good to go over sort of our plans for accelerating operational communications, and some of those things will be hopefully provide some like blanket improvements to things like various kinds of social dependencies to get the information out there and to help folks just understand what's going on and get the word out. So when there's time, I can
so we've got 20 minutes left. We have 2 items raised. So Leonard, Martin, do you want to do just sort of 5 to 7 minutes, just a testing update, and then we can give the remainder of the time, the 12-13 minutes, to Matthew to talk through the Q&A and some stuff that we're doing.
Yes. So first of all, I had a question to Volo from the Daedalus perspective. I know we probably don't have it in the diagram. We don't. When are you going to have your testing? I presume you do some testing of Daedalus against which version?
Yeah. Actually, we're waiting for 9.0 to be released. And then Cardano wallet is going to update the component, and we should be ready to integrate. But we kind of just waiting for it, and for us that should be just a bump of the components. And taking the current timeline that you just showed, 27th, that's the 9.0. I would say maybe a week or 2 for us to run for the upstream components update and to release Daedalus. So but that's a top priority for us. Once the components in place, we just jump on it right away.
So Daedalus will be ready, will be fully feature. There'll be no issue feature-wise for Daedalus for the hard fork?
For the first one, no. As long as you don't have this lock-in mechanism in the node, and it was confirmed that we don't have for first hard fork.
Yeah.
For us, that should be a simple upgrade of the components, bump of the node, and That means all old features should work in new era as expected, as before. Yeah.
What about the second hard fork?
The second one is, I was told there's going to be this decision whether the lock-in mechanism is going to be implemented. If so, that we might need to add this delegate to direct feature to Daedalus. But that's, yeah, that depends on this lock-in mechanism in Node, if it's going to be in place for the second hard fork or not.
The
Yeah, but
decision
we
was
have
made
to have,
keep it in.
yeah, we have to have the ability to withdraw rewards as well on the second hard fork.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, but this depends if this lock-in mechanism is introduced in the node, then yeah, this causes an issue, and we need to add this feature in Daedalus. So I believe that Sam and that's something that you mentioned, that after the first half fork, you guys are gonna kind of decide on this lock-in mechanism in terms of rewards. Is it still the case, or?
It's happening. Charles is pretty adamant he wants it. So.
Oh, that's
so what we discussed hasn't changed, Sam, right?
Right.
Okay. So then there's nothing to be discussed. It's there. We've agreed it, and yeah.
Oh, it's gonna be implemented. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Assume it's going to be implemented. Yeah.
Yep.
And
100%.
it's gonna end up in this 9.0 or
10.0.
in a later node?
10.0.
10.0. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's good to know. Thanks for this one. Then
Yes,
accordingly, on the Daedalus side, we'll be planning to add this feature for the second half fork, delegate into the wrap in order to unblock people to withdraw rewards. Yeah.
Great.
Okay.
Leonard Martin, just 5 minutes testing key points.
Yeah, I think Martin, you can carry this one in terms of our usual updates from where we are with the user stories and also the additional D quadrant embed.
Hello. Yeah, so the quadrant is currently helping us with increasing our testing coverage. They created several new user stories and covered them with test. I'm currently reviewing their PR into our testing repository, and they also contributed some Bluetooth testing. They have their own testing framework for that. So I will probably need to ask someone from Bluetooth team to review this. They have like tests for basically all the crypto primitives that are there in Bluetooth v3. And my team, we are currently focusing, or we start to focus on the guardrail script because we haven't tested it yet, and there's quite short time for doing that. We already have pretty good parameter update test where we can incorporate it. So I think it will go pretty smoothly, but yeah, we will need to focus on that because this will take us some time, and because it will be already deployed into SanchoNet, we should test it also in our test suite on local cluster.
And I guess, Martin, it's good to mention we did sit with Roman Sulat on the conformance tool that they have actually built, which I think you're going to look at integrating the results of that into our user story inventory as well. So that's quite a good way of checking those safe and unsafe parameters. Guardrails, I should say. Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. Thank you. Any key questions on that? Slightly conscious of time.
It's worth calling out the audit is finishing probably worst case end of next week. Identity management scripts have been audited, remediation happening. The guardrails is probably sometime next week, and if anything pops up on those, remediation thereafter. Thank you.
Thanks. Ryan, hand up.
Yeah, just do we have a Slack channel that I could ping further questions on the network dependencies and timelines? Or Discord or something?
There is a Slack channel. I'll add you to it, and I actually need to update it. So we'll take that as an action to make sure everyone that's now on the call is on it.
And then I just wanted to confirm, so you mentioned the audit for the guardrails script is potentially going to end next week. If
Yes.
that is done and there's no remediation necessary, for example, will that be included in 9.01 if available?
Absolutely, Daniel. So once we've got the results and we've applied any remediation, we will include the guardrail script in the Genesis file.
Okay.
Somebody mentioned a license for the guardrail script recently on a chat. Is there such a thing, Kevin?
Yes, okay. So this is simply the open source license mode.
Okay,
so
gotcha.
what we will do is to release the guardrail script. Now we've completed the legal review. It will be released on the Plutus repository, and that is covered by the Apache 2.0 open source license.
Right, thank you both. Matthew, do you want to talk a bit about what's been going on around sharing and Q&A sessions, etc.?
Yes. All right, let's jump into that. So I just threw some slides here. Just drop those in the chat. Very simple. So until now, the Hard Fork Working Group has had, there may be one other or two others that I'm missing here, so let me know if I am. But from my general awareness, we've had basically three sort of outlets for communication. One is IOG's monthly SPO call, where Matt has been gracious enough to be a guest panelist. Then there's the Intersect newsletter, so some updates coming up from there, and the page in the knowledge base, but with no sort of great exposure. Now, obviously, there's a major component of these hard forks is bringing the community along, both sentiment-wise, the people are ready and confident and feel that there's legitimacy in it, that they're aware of what's being done and that they're confident in the upgrade. And obviously, there's also the technical readiness of key players having their infrastructure upgraded and being confident in it. So on the more social side, we've sort of created a plan here of a few general elements to have in a weekly operational comms cadence. I won't go over every single item here, but I just wanted to pull out a couple that are especially important. So one is for broadcast. So and this is just a check with the group to make sure that all members are comfortable with this and are maybe have alternate suggestions as well. But at the moment, the thought is that we take these recordings and we start to put them on the Intersect YouTube channel, and that we take notes from these and publish, a summary on Twitter, so that basically we just begin to distribute this information out there, because that information is concentrated in the knowledge base, but there's just not awareness in the wider ecosystem, except that just generally speaking something is happening, right? So so then that is connected in part with the Q&A. So the Q&A is this sort of big weekly conversational piece of this. We've had two thoughts about how to do this. One is to have it directly after the Hard Fork Working Group. So the idea would actually be to live stream or otherwise invite a larger number of observers to the Hard Fork Working Group itself. So these people wouldn't be speaking or engaged in the conversation during the meeting, but then there would be a period afterwards where basically at least some number of members would stick around and there would be a Q&A session for maybe 15 minutes, something like that. Alternatively, we could publish the recordings and the notes, and then a couple of days later have a separate Q&A with a few people who can be panelists. So basically people have a chance to look at the recordings, see if they have any questions, maybe test some things out, and then have their questions later. So these would be focused questions aimed at the points raised in the agenda. It's always possible that we don't have a ton of participation. It could be relatively small, but the important piece is just to have that door open so that there's a medium for communication, channel for communication if people want to do that. So those are the major items. Oh, let me just touch on one other major thing here, which is empirical measures of system readiness. So we had a couple, or there are a few sort of general major measurements that are often taken in past hard forks for how we determine the readiness of major parts of the ecosystem. And so I just wanted to confirm with the members as well. I know this is something that Matt is thinking about and that we're sort of planning around, but just to see also, because these are a good kind of backbone for all of our social stuff, we also have this weekly cadence of saying, all right, how many SPOs have upgraded, are downstream components compatible, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I guess we start maybe on the recordings and notes and the publicity of those. Are there any objections or difficulties with the recordings being published on YouTube and us starting to sort of distribute those out a little bit more? No, we're good. All right. Well, and just to be aware from a sort of community relations and communication standpoint, this is mostly going to be received positively. It's always possible that like somebody tries to troll and like take a clip out of context and do whatever on social media, and that's where people like me and others others our supporters in the wider community as well come in to recontextualize things and help. But it's just better in general if the door is open and if people have that transparency, especially with the MBO model. It's just and this close to the hard fork, so it's really good to get that information out there. So then for the Q&A, I suppose partly our decision about whether we go with the live stream version or we do recordings and then do a Q&A later on in the week depends on the platforms. But any strong opinions about that from the members of the group about whether we live stream and do a Q&A directly afterwards or put out recordings and then do one later on in the week. Right now we have one provisionally scheduled for Thursday, and so I'll be asking for volunteer panelists for that in a moment here. But any strong opinions about how that is done?
It's just our offline discussion. As long as we move it around so there's ample opportunity in different time zones, I think we have to try different formats and see what sticks. Appreciate that isn't maybe the best approach, but if you ask people what their favorite mechanism is, we've had split opinions on Discord or Google Meets or Zooms in the past. Yeah. I think we just try 2 or 3, and at least then that's our safety net to say that we tried various ways. There was ample opportunity. The key thing for those is we socialize them. So again, we'll tweet out the times and the dates of them and try and get a consensus. We'll go to the SBO call again in 2 weeks' time.
Yep. Okay, great. And so I oftentimes pull on Sam and Kevin for those things, and they're often gracious enough to oblige. Kevin, Sam, are you able to be panelists on those regularly for a weekly Q&A?
Yep.
Yes, absolutely. We'll need to work around any conflicts that we might have, e.g. with SPO calls.
Yeah, we'll sort those out.
We can use Carlos as well.
Carlos? All right, cool. I'll reach out to him then. Great. And then, okay, I don't think there's anything else then, apart from, if just anything that I raised there, if anybody has any other questions or objections. It's pretty simple stuff overall, but I just wanted to make everybody aware of that kind of transition and acceleration into being more public and to sort of work on distributing this information. So yeah, if you have anything else on that, please let me know. Also, yeah, I think over the next couple of weeks, I'll be helping to get some of those things spun up a bit more. Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting the sort of publicity and communications going a bit more. So that's me.
Cool, thank you for that. Really appreciate it. Before we close out, any more questions, queries? Like I said, I will change the cadence of this to be weekly. Now we're approaching times where lots of things are happening. So I'm conscious not everyone will make every week. And as ever, we will get the notes out from the session, usually the day after. So Wednesday, there'll be updates to the knowledge base after we've sort of sanitized and concised anything that has been said. Leonard?
Look, let's look ahead, because there's always a point here which one level of the SPOs, the DApps, and the exchanges will be at the threshold. At some point, are we going to nudge that to say we're going, or are we going to will we just handle that week by week? What's your view?
Let's start off week by week. I'm conscious that we have spoken to G-Day and Sebastian at the CF, but I know they're at an away day this week. So I've got a date in the diary to catch up with them on Friday. But it's a salient question, especially for exchanges to them.
Yeah.
So we'll keep a week by week track as things go. I'll put it in the chat as well. It's not public yet, but we have prepped kind of an attestation page, which is really similar to what was done for Vasil. So probably not this week, but next week, as people start to have the node available for testing, we'll have that up. We'll get all the major players on there to attest and socialize when they're ready, and we'll again, it'll be open for other people to sort of opt in to that, to say that they're at the right level. And again, through the CF and the SBO's call and portal and other kind of mechanisms, we'll keep a running total of those thresholds.
And I've got a question for Michael. Michael, in terms of the actual voting, do you want to give us a quick how that's coming along? Just a sentiment.
Yes, the interim constitutional committee elections are ongoing. The vote closes on June 23rd. We're going to do a brief audit of the results and announce the results on June 26th. And then in parallel, we are going to work with the candidates to generate their cold credentials in advance, so that doesn't become a blocker. But I think just want to maybe with Ryan and Sam clarify on this creating of a pre-prod credential in addition to the mainnet credential and what needs to happen there.
Thank you.
All right, last orders. Any more, Danielle?
Yeah, I was just wondering on Matt presented the backbone for hard fork readiness. In this case, we may consider adding interim constitutional committee member readiness to that as well. That's a new body that hasn't been in old hard forks that may be important.
So I have listed it on our dependencies page. To what end we actually do with them is still up for discussion, but I think it's important once those people have been elected that they are a social group that we ask that they feel ready to take the mantle of the governance that they've opted for. So we didn't go through it, but Matt said we are doing some polling to use the existing kind of structures, the membership structures that Insect have stood up. So although it's not a hard dependency, we've polled our hubs, so hubs in different localized regions as a test. We will be polling our other sort of senior steering committees, so the membership and community committee, because that's their remit to look after members, the open source, because it has a very good attendance from lots of people in the industry, and we will poll, even though it's probably a yes, hopefully, the parameters committee, and again we'll use the CT, even though it's not an inset committee, as part of that governance structure, so it reinforces the fact that there is a structure there, and if you participate in that membership governance, you can be a part of it. So we'll talk about it in the coming weeks when the CC of those people have been elected, but I do think it's just a matter of when, and then we just ask them a very simple question that they feel ready, that they have all the information and this sort of potted history so they can answer questions if they're asked, maybe at the end of their training.
Okay, thanks.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you, Matt.
Speak again soon. Notes will be out tomorrow.
Bye, everybody.
Cheers. Bye.
Take care.
Bye.